Okay, so why don't we kick off the course then? So you're all very welcome to week 3 of the course. I'm not sure, I hope everyone has been here before, but if you haven't been, you're very welcome anyway. My name is Vajrashura, and Kevin is on IT support beside me in the same room. We live here and we share a house together. And if you have any problems with your anything with technology or anything, you can message Kevin directly. He's the co-host. He'll be at the top, near the top of your list of participants. Kevin, maybe you could do the usual sound message if they can't hear me. That would be great. Thanks. Welcome to people just arriving. Welcome to Rosemary from Limerick and Sheila from Wexford and Sinead from Galway. This feels like the closest I'll get to being on television, it must be said. So what we're going to do today is, oh, by the way, sorry, just a couple of housekeeping. Again, as always, if you need to turn off your video to make the sound quality better, please do so. And I think we had some problems with the sound last week, but I think they seem to be okay. You can hear me, Kevin, without breaking up and stuff. Yeah, good. Okay, to say what we'll do today, I'll just, let me just share the screen for a moment. So what we're going to do today, actually, Kevin, could you go up to my room, and in my drawer beside my computer, there's my little tapper. Do you know the thing? It's in a little pouch. Okay, so what we'll do today is we'll start off with some introductions, and we'll have a recap of last week and the home practice. How did we get on with the home practice? So the home practice during the week was to do the mindfulness of breathing. To do the mindfulness of breathing every day. And I'll come back to what we did last week in a few moments. We won't be doing a long meditation in the first half today because we've got a bit to do in the second half. So in the second half, we'll do a we'll do a short body scan anyway. And then in the second half, today we're going to be exploring loving kindness. So the theme for today is loving kindness and developing what's called metta, kindness, friendliness, loving kindness. I'll say more about that in the second half. And we'll do the second of the 2 main meditation practices that we do, which is the metta bhavana, the development of loving kindness. And then at the end, we will do home practice, and we'll answer some questions as usual. Okay, so to remind you of what we did last week, sorry, let me just get this off, Kevin. Could you slide out the thing out of it? Could you stick that into the adapter there? The grey adapter, thank you. Just at the bottom there. Yeah. Not at that one. On the sides. Great. Sorry about that. Just forgot to get something connected up technology-wise. So what we did last week was we looked at the mindfulness of breathing a bit more, in particular how to apply mindfulness in 4 ways, the 4 foundations or the 4 applications of mindfulness. So we looked at body, mindfulness of the body, which is very important. Mindfulness of feeling tones, which I said you probably haven't come across before in this particular way before. It's mindfulness of whether any sensations we experience, for example, in the body is pleasant, painful, or neutral, or somewhere in between. Or even as well, emotions of feeling tones, they can be pleasant or painful. Thoughts of feeling tones, they can be pleasant or painful. So anything we experience has an associated feeling tone, according to the Buddha. And we construct a lot of stories and a lot of our life out of, avoiding unpleasant ones and trying to get as much of the pleasant ones as we can, and cause ourselves a lot of unhappiness as a result. And then the third application of mindfulness was emotions, and the 4th was thoughts. And we talked about the importance of using these to set up, and we talked about finishing well as well, doing a bit of just sitting at the end. And we also talked a bit about how, even if you haven't been meditating, it'd be really good to tune into these during the week. Every now and again, stop and, tune in to what the foundations of mindfulness are. A better way of putting that is probably to apply the foundations of mindfulness in your day. So I was encouraging you to do that as well. So I'd be curious to hear if anyone did that and how you got on with that. But anyway, so that was the recap of last week. So maybe what we could do now is I'll launch a poll. It's the same poll as last week, just to get a sense of how you got on during the week. But also while you're doing that, if you have any questions, do type them into the chat box or any comments. about how you got on. And we have a few minutes now to explore it before we move on to the next thing. So it's going to launch the poll now. So this will come up on your screen, hopefully. And I think what we discovered last week, wasn't it, that on the phone, if you're on a phone, it's not always entirely obvious that you have to scroll down to the bottom and press the send button. So hopefully you can all see that now and start filling it in. So off you go. And feel free again to write any comments or questions. Kevin, you've seen that hand up there, have you? Yeah, great. Great. So 5 days this week seems to be the front runner at the moment. I could do a horse race kind of thing on it. Leading by 3 lengths. I don't think you guys can see the results as you type them in, I guess. I found it difficult to get into the zone to do meditation sometimes. Yeah, that's true, Saoirse. That happens. Being in your bed is very comfortable. For example, if you have to try and get up to go to meditation and get in the zone, or maybe you mean as well, just even when you sit down, it's difficult to get in the zone. Meditation, you try not to judge it by whether or not it's enjoyable or whether or not it feels pleasurable, because it won't always feel pleasurable. It won't always feel enjoyable, although it can feel very enjoyable as well. And when it is enjoyable, that's great. There's nothing wrong with it being enjoyable. That's really good. But sometimes it is a bit uncomfortable. And I think that the teaching is just to keep doing it, because if you keep doing it, it will have an effect. It doesn't have to be enjoyable to have a positive effect. It'd be nice if it was always positive and enjoyable, But I know for me, almost always, like 99.9% of the times, even if it's not enjoyable, I always benefit from it, Now, if there's a lot going on and life's very complex, it might need to be, that might be a bit of a simplistic way of looking at it. But I think almost always it's beneficial. And the key is just to do it. And the more you do it as well, the more you tend to enjoy it as well, the more you tend to find it pleasurable or see the benefit of it. I've started to prioritize exercise over the last few weeks, which is a new habit for me. I found it difficult to find both. Yeah. So there's lots of new habits being taken up as well. Yeah. Thanks, Roisin. Glad that was useful. There's so much exercise going on. I was giving. I was up for a 21-day meditation challenge. Oh, okay, great, good. Yeah, very helpful. Thanks. Yeah, good. So let's see. So it looks like 91% of people have voted. So I'm sorry for the 5 people who don't seem to be able to, who have, maybe, I'm not sure, maybe you're still thinking about it. So I'm not going to assume that it's not working, but I'll end the polling in just another second or two. Find sitting on my chair more productive for me. That's great. Yeah, do let me know about posture as well. We'll come on to that now. Okay, so I'm going to end the polling, I'm afraid, if you haven't voted. I'm sorry about that. So most people did it 5 days or more, which is great, I think, which is really great. Slight drop off from last week. Want to watch that, guys? Oh, sorry, I have to share the results. Sorry, let me share them now. Okay, good. So yeah, most people did 5 days. I think 5 days is great. If you guys are doing 5 days, I'm really happy. If you're doing less than that, that's fine, but do try and prioritize it, because even if it's just for the next two weeks, you'll get a taste of what meditation can do, and then after that you can decide whether or not to keep it going. But really try the next 2 weeks now to make an effort. And well done for the 5 people who did it sometimes more than once a day, and the 7 people who did it every single day as well, apart from that. So in terms of your posture, that's good. The vast majority of people found it comfortable enough or comfortable. There's a few of you who find it very difficult to get sorted. And I think if you are one of the people who found posture very difficult, do try something. Just try something. I guess at this stage, if you're still finding posture very difficult, maybe even try, dare I say it, lying down if you're not going to fall asleep. But just try and get something in. And after a certain point, if it's just restlessness, you might just have to sit with that, you know. It might just be that when you sit down to meditate, you're more in touch with deeper stuff, and that's a bit painful, and you know, you get fidgety or whatever, but that's just what you have to do, sit with that, you know. In terms of more people early morning than last week, I think, but that's interesting. So and a few people late at night. I've meditated throughout the day, and to be honest, I find all times really nice. So it's great. So what was the main thing? You forgot to prioritize it. Yep, that's the usual one. And found meditation difficult and had resistance. Well, that was what someone was saying earlier on. You know, you will have resistance, and that's normal. But you will have resistance. But that's normal, but you just keep doing it anyway. So I don't know how to pronounce your name, but why are you recommending sitting versus lying down? Well, lying down, if lying down meditation works for you, that's fine. But the problem is that most people fall asleep. And it's not that there's anything wrong with falling asleep as such, but when you're meditating, you want to meditate. So if you can lie down and stay awake, that's fine. In my experience, unless you've got a very spacious life, most people can't do that. I certainly can't. Yeah. My head falls forward when doing this. Oh, sitting on a chair, I guess you mean. Yeah, so there is a certain, with posture, there is a certain uprightness. You do have to work at keeping your head quite upright. I'm going to just close that polling results. The image that's used sometimes is you want the top of your head flat and rising towards the ceiling. So like the back of your neck is long. So you will have to keep an effort to make sure you're upright. And like, I think I said this a couple of weeks ago or last week, that you will start to fall forward naturally in a chair, or your head will start to fall forward. And posture is kind of like an ongoing thing where you relax, and then you have to check that you're upright. And as you relax, sometimes you relax down and you have to fix your posture. Often in meditation, you just have to make subtle postures to make yourself upright again. I'm exaggerating it there a little bit. And you just do that slowly and carefully. If you have to move, you know, if you really, really have to move to scratch your nose, well, the teaching is you ask yourself, do I really have to move? And if the answer is yes, then you don't move. And then you ask yourself again, do I really, really have to move? And if the answer is yes, you don't move. And then the third time you move really slowly, you literally move like this, if you can see my hand, and scratch your nose, and then move back down again. And there's a big difference between doing that and doing something like that. Do you know? So you're trying to keep yourself still and in the meditation. Anyways, that's not quite related to what people were asking, but it's a good point to make anyway. Any other comments or questions coming in that you want to ask? I see some people have joined in the last few minutes, so you're very welcome to the course. Okay, so, here we go. Yeah, sorry to hear that, Sheila. So Sheila has a lot of anxiety around meditating. I get anxious at the thought of it and have to force myself, then I can get very anxious during it. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a few different things there. I mean, the fact is that, well, it might be worth looking at why are you getting anxious? So what's the story you're telling yourself? So anxiety is typically a story you're telling yourself about something. And the story might be something like, if I sit down to meditate here, it'll be very, very painful because I have all this stuff going on, you know? And you might have to just examine in Buddhism, we call it those views. Really, a view is just a story that we tell ourselves. So it might be worth looking at, what's the story I'm telling myself here about my meditation? Is this is it my experience that when I sit down previously, it's so painful that I never want to go back? And hopefully it hasn't been like that, even though it has been painful at times. Do I think that it will help if I can sit and meditate? You know, look at the story that you're telling yourself around things. And this goes for any of the distractions, actually. You know, what story am I telling myself here about my daydreaming? You know, what story am I telling myself about my need to get annoyed with that person, and so on, whatever way you get distracted. And we'll come back to this a bit next week when we talk about specific strategies for working with things like anxiety and other things that take you away from meditation. But with anxiety, I think it's important to try and breathe with it, to feel it in the body, and don't get too into the story about it. So if you can feel the tightness and the pain and anxiety in the body, I mean, it's counterintuitive for us to turn towards something that's painful, but we should do that. And feel it in the body, feel the tightness in your shoulders, the constriction in your throat, the pain in your heart, wherever you feel it. And just see if you can soften the body part of it. And if you can soften the body part of it, it'll tend to release the more mental aspect of it. And the other thing you might want to do, I think Kevin mentioned this last week, is try and get more exercise as well off the cushion, you know, outside that, like just try and be more in your body, and that really undercuts anxiety as well. So let us know how you get on with that, Sheila, and drop me a line if you need to. Mike, yeah, a stack of coins upright, that's a good image for how your body is. In a way, it's not bad because that's what the vertebrae are. Or you can imagine your vertebrae like that in terms of your posture. Marianne, does it make a difference regarding the method of breathing? I'd really encourage you not to try any technique for breathing, actually, because apart from just being with the breath as it already is, and that's quite challenging, actually, because but don't try. If you get into technique, you might get into controlling the breath, which you're not trying to do. I mean, I'm not quite sure what the box breath is that you mentioned, Marianne, but just really try and let the breath be natural. I mean, you're already breathing right now without any technique. So ideally what you're trying to do is just tune into that breathing that you're already doing. If you get into kind of trying to work out techniques, you might get into subtle forms of control. Now, if that's what you have to do, that's what you have to do in terms of your technique. But just see if you can let go of that. So 2 people said that they really liked the book on Buddhism. That's great. So I feel like sitting up, I'm not getting enough air in. I tried lying down, but I dozed off. Felt a good bit of resistance this week. Sorry to hear that. Yeah, so if you're not getting enough air in, you might want to just vary the way you're sitting. If you're slouched, it tends to put pressure on your diaphragm down here where my hands are. And so maybe what you can try and do is just vary the uprightness with which you sit. If you sit too upright, you'll also constrict your breathing. So you're trying to sit naturally upright. And maybe what you could do is just notice how you're breathing throughout your day. Every now and again, maybe you're sitting at a desk and you're at your computer, and just stop and see, so what's my breathing feel like now? Does it feel like I'm getting enough air here? Because there you're actually doing more exercise, so to speak, than in meditation. So again, it might also be a story. It might be, it might not be, I don't know. But also feel free to take deeper breaths if you need to. But don't get into kind of like endless, really big, deep breaths, because you might make yourself dizzy as well. So it's not like holotropic breathing or anything like that, if you know what that is. Okay, great. I think I can't remember how you pronounce it. Is it leaky, is it? Anyways, I'm sorry about that. Thanks, Marianne. Good. Okay, so let's move on. So Lika, great, thank you. That's great. Let's move on. So why don't we just do a short meditation now for maybe 4 or 5 minutes, just to help us arrive, and then we'll move into the second half of the morning. So set yourself up to be comfortable. It's literally just going to be 5 minutes, so it's not going to be a long time. Okay, so settling in now to your posture, settling into whatever way you're sitting. Just noticing your levels of physical uprightness. Do you need to be more upright? Do you need to relax a little bit into it? Tuning into the surroundings, the sounds we can hear, the sense of the room around us, the people in the building and beyond. tuning into the body a little bit more. Perhaps feeling the contact of your feet and legs with the floor, with the chair, with the cushions, whatever you're sitting on. Feeling the contact of your sitting bones with the chair, with the cushion. Maybe feeling your stomach and abdomen, maybe feeling the breath in your stomach and abdomen. The rise and fall of your stomach as you breathe in and as you breathe out. Noticing your back, your shoulders. Noticing your arms and your hands. And your fingers and thumbs. Checking that your face is soft. You're not frowning or clenching your jaw. Relaxing your brain, relaxing behind the eyes if there's any pressure built up here. And coming down and dwelling in the heart center, the heart area. And for the last few moments, just being with the breath, letting the breath be natural if we can. Just watching every inhalation, every exhalation. And just letting go a bit more into the posture with each exhalation. And feeling more invigorated with each inhalation. And then just letting go of everything and just sitting for a few last moments. Taking in the room around us again, the sounds we can hear. In your own time then, bringing the practice to a close, reintroducing movement, and opening your eyes. Okay, so usual ad break now. So I'll just share the screen again. So don't forget that the meditation course has been offered completely for free. But if you want to help support the Dublin Buddhist Centre, that would be most appreciated. So please do consider making a donation if you can, if you're in a position to do so. You can see the link there. It's dublinbuddhistcentre.org/donate, and I'll send you that in the week's notes again. And you know, anything you give helps us to continue to put on courses like this. So at the moment, actually, one of the things we're looking at is a follow-on course to this meditation course, which will happen after this course ends. So you might be happy to hear that. And there's lots of other events we want to put on and things we want to do, but we're almost entirely dependent upon donations at the moment. So please do consider supporting us in that way. If you don't have money, that's fine too. To give a sense, if you've done this meditation course in the centre, we have a suggested amount that we ask people to pay. If you're waged, it'd be 170. If you're low wage, it's 130. If you're unwaged, it's 95. If you're under 25, it'd be 55 euros. Now, obviously, this is a different course because it's not in the centre and it's not as long, and you're not getting the same kind of, you're not in this beautiful Buddhist centre, unfortunately. But you might like to consider those or something like that as well if you can. And if you're not in a position to give, that's completely fine too. We're very happy to put on these courses for free. The other thing to say then is that all our online events are there on our website too. So particularly we have an online portal, which is dublinbuddhistcentre.org/online. There is an Art of Reflection course starting tonight, which I had mentioned last week. So that's a Buddhism course. So if you might have already done it, but maybe Kev can share the link for that. And I'll send you details of that in the email in a couple of hours' time. I don't think it'd be too much to do the two courses together, although it could be a lot in one day. It's up to you to work that out. It'll be 6 weeks long. And I'm not clear yet which day the follow-on course will happen. It'll either be a Wednesday morning or a Thursday morning, but it'll almost certainly be the week after we finish. Just one more thing to highlight in terms of this course, which I clarified during the week, and hopefully I'll remind us of that again at the end. Maybe you can remind me if I forget, Kevin. So unfortunately for week 5 of this course, I am actually going to be doing a little solitary retreat myself. So we're going to have, instead of week 5 of this course, there's going to be a practice morning led by another order member from the Buddhist Centre. And then I'll do week 5 the week after that, if you see what I mean. So next week we'll have week 4. And then on I think it's the 14th of June, Nyanadhara will lead a practice morning where he'll do a period of mindfulness and breathing, a period of the Metta Bhavana, the practice we'll do shortly, and there'll be a chance for questions. So that's obviously optional if you want to come along. I'd really encourage you to come along to that. And then on week 5, I'll do week 5 the week after that, the week I'm back. So I'm sorry about that, in effect it means it spreads out the course over 6 weeks. There was just no way around. I wasn't quite clear until this week on how the dates were going to work out. We did talk about someone else leading week 5 instead of me, but I think it's nice to do the course together for the 5 weeks, and it's nice to have a familiar face here. So I hope that works out. So yeah, week 5 will be the 24th of June. If you can't make it that day, it will be recorded as always, and I'll make it available on YouTube for whenever you want to do it. But week 4 will be next week. The next week after that will be the 4th. It's the 17th of June. I'm sorry. Yeah, it is like a bonus week. Yeah. You get a bonus week at no extra cost, even though the course is free anyway. So, let's see. A few questions come in. Deirdre was asking, will that course be running at an earlier time or another point? Do you mean the Art of Reflection, Deirdre? We'll be running it again, I'm sure. If you mean it is in the evenings. But we will be running it again. The follow-on course will be run like this one in the mornings, and it'll all be recorded. So if you can't make the live sessions, I'll email you all the YouTube, and I'll email you the link next week or over the coming week for the booking for that if you want to, because we haven't quite decided yet the exact date for it. Yeah. Great. Okay, Deirdre, thank you. Anyone else? Can anyone do a solitary retreat? Yes, you can, but I wouldn't always recommend it. I mean, basically a solitary retreat is where you just go off on your own. Because I can't actually travel, I'm going over to my partner's house, who's completely isolated. I hope I'm not going to get arrested for this now or anything. And we're just doing the solitary retreat together. Normally I do it on my own. I had one booked for Curry County Kerry a couple of weeks back, but it obviously couldn't happen. I go away for a week or 2 weeks completely on my own, do lots of meditation. It can be quite intense. It can be quite intense, you know, if you're not used to it. You might like to do a weekend first, but to be honest, I suspect with the lockdown, it might be better to do things with people if you're on your own a lot. Mike, I'm not sure yet if the Art of Reflection is being recorded. I think he's going to try and record some parts of it, but I was chatting to him about this, the guy leading it. He also wants to be able to make sure that people are free to be able to talk and discuss things as well without being recorded. So I'm hoping that parts of it will be recorded and I can make those available. You know, I'll just email you guys all about that anyway, if you want to look at the recordings, regardless of whether you've booked on, and you can decide yourself if you want to do it. I'll see how he leads it tonight. He's still kind of, we haven't run this course online yet, so we're kind of figuring it out a bit, but we'll record as much as we can and make it available to you, okay? Okay, good. Great to hear the enthusiasm for these things. Let's see, I think that's it. Okay, so let's move on then. So, excuse me. So you can still send in questions if you want. So let me just share the screen again. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to ask you a few questions that I want you to think about. Speaking of reflection, I'm going to be asking you to reflect upon a couple of questions now. And this is a way of coming into the Metta Bhavana, the loving kindness practice. So, sorry, let me just move on. So this question is the first one. So in a way, it's simple enough. It looks a bit more complicated there. So what would it be like to have a completely positive relationship with yourself? What would it feel like? How would you behave? So, you know, the opposite of this would be, you know, the way you give yourself a really hard time, you get annoyed at yourself, you think you're not a good person and so on. So what would it be like to have a completely positive relationship with yourself? Yeah. What would it feel like? How would you behave? Yeah. So I want you to reflect upon that for a few minutes, like 2 or 3 minutes, and then I want you to start typing into the chat box your responses to that. Okay, so what would it feel like to have a completely positive relationship with yourself? What would it feel like? So do have a think for a moment or two before you start typing. Feel your way into that, where you never give yourself a hard time. Well, actually, I'm answering the question for you. I want you to answer that. If you're not clear about the question, you can comment on that as well. And would it be different to how you kind of, how you do it now? You don't have to write that into the chat box, but it's another way of reflecting about it as well. What would it be like to have a completely positive relationship with yourself? How would it feel? How would you behave? And feel free to start typing into the chat box whenever you want. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize people were typing already. Great. Okay, good. Calm, it would feel wonderful. Unnatural. Yeah, it might feel unnatural, but unnatural is only what we're used to. Unobstructed relationship with deeper self, great. More time for others' feelings, yeah, that's great. I actually don't know, that's very honest, thank you. Yeah, that's probably quite a few people's experience. Freedom, more positive actions. Encouraging and supporting. Empowering, freedom. Strange, yeah, and so unfortunately it would feel strange. I wouldn't feel ashamed, yeah, good. Empowered, enlightened, self-worthy, good, great, yeah. It would be bliss, yeah, you would feel content and happy, you would be more accepting and open to others. Isn't that interesting that the more you could accept yourself, the better you'd be with other people? Amazing, peaceful, supportive, loving, calm and free, totally at peace. Difficult to envision. No negative self-thought, question mark, yeah. Wonderfully honest and authentic. Alien but empowering, maybe a bit false. Yeah, we'll come back to that, Fanula, in a minute. Supportive, uncluttered, liberating, freeing, not being so hard on myself, able to congratulate myself more. There's a lot of really good comments coming. I'm not going to be able to read them all, actually. They're coming in so fast. less consumed with other people's opinions. That's a really interesting one. Calmness and contentment. Yeah, that's great. Okay. So I think you're all getting the message. Feel different. Yeah. So, yeah, great. Yeah. So I think you've all got a sense of how nice that would be. I haven't seen anything negative there. So one of the things we're going to be doing in the Metta Bhavana practice is cultivating a completely positive, warm regard for yourself. Yeah. And Buddhism's really, really clear that there is no reason to be unkind to yourself. So I had a friend of mine, Ben, who I lived with for a few years. He was meditating for years and years and years, and then he went on a retreat, a 2-week retreat in the UK, and he had one of the most powerful insight experiences of his life, where breaking up a little bit. Let's see if it's going to come back. So how is the sound now? Is it? Thanks. Yeah. Is it okay now, Kevin? I'll keep talking. It's still breaking up. Okay. Let's just see how the internet connection is. I'll just wait a minute and see how it's coming. Is it better? Is it getting better now again? Okay, so improving. Thanks, Una. Better again. Okay, sorry about that. Not sure why that happens. Thanks for letting me know. Do let us know if that happens, because obviously I have no way of knowing if it happens like that again. Yeah, so anyway, so I was telling the story of a friend of mine, Ben, who he was meditating for many years and went on a long 2-week retreat in England, and he had a very powerful experience, what he saw as an insight, which he realized there's no reason to give yourself a hard time. It was as simple as that, and it changed his life, I have to say. And he was someone who would be very anxious and very hard on himself as well. So Buddhism is really clear that there's no reason to give yourself a hard time about things. There's no reason to be unkind to yourself, yeah? And being unkind is different to having a critique, okay? So you can still say to yourself, okay, I didn't do that great there. I need to do better next time. Okay, Vajrashur, you need to learn from this and your mistakes here. Okay, when you do that, that really annoys that person, so let's not do that anymore. So there's no reason not to be able to do that, but you can do that without being unkind, yeah? And often we say things to ourselves that we would never say to another person. So it's trying to get away from that mindset, trying to get away from feeling like you need to give out to yourself, as we say in Ireland. If you're not from Ireland, when we say give out, it means be critical of, you know? Yeah, really, really encourage you. Now, like earlier, I was talking about stories earlier on. So this is something that you might have to look at the stories you're telling yourself. And one strong story that I notice in people and in myself sometimes is that you tell yourself, if I'm not unkind to myself, I'll get carried away and egotistical and be, you know, highfalutin and be out of control. That's generally not my experience. So the more kind you can be to yourself, the more real you tend to be. So you're not going to go out of control by stopping being unkind to yourself, if you see what I mean. You're not going to become a pain to everyone by not being unkind to yourself. It's actually the more kind you can be to yourself, the more pleasant you tend to be around other people as well. So really look at your stories, if you have stories around your need to be unkind to yourself. And when I say stories, that maybe makes it sound a bit too conceptual. Like, these are deep-rooted tendencies within ourselves as well. Okay, I hope that's clear anyway. This is something that you'll be exploring over the next while anyway. Time moves on, so let's look at the next question. So the next question is, it's a bit of a nicer question in some ways. Well, I mean, that was a nice question, but you might have to look into yourself a bit more. But this is about a friend. So I want you to think of a good friend and recollect their good qualities. So think of someone you naturally feel warmth towards. Okay, I think I'm breaking up a bit again. So thanks, Kevin. Let's see, is it still breaking up? Is it still, I'm just gonna keep talking mindlessly for a minute or two. Let's see if it's still breaking up. Let's see now. Okay, that's grand. In any case, the question now, so the question is, think of a good friend and recollect their good qualities. So what is it about your good friend that you enjoy, that you appreciate, that you like. So I want you to think about that for a minute. That's not what you're going to put in the chat box. So just stay with that, how that is for the moment. Think of their good qualities. So pick someone you naturally feel warm and caring towards, a good friend. What is it that you appreciate? What is it that you like about them? Okay, so the second part of this question is, oh, I think I'm breaking up a little bit again. The second part of this question is, how do you feel towards that person? How would you describe this feeling? Yeah. So how do you feel towards this person? You know, just so you're tuning into how you're feeling now towards that person, after having reflected upon their good qualities. And now in the chat box, how would you describe what you're feeling? Great, so non-judgmental and accepting. Yeah, of me. Yeah, that's their quality. Connected, fondness, respect and love. Yeah, warm and fuzzy. Great, yeah. Confident, open, warmth. Yeah, a lot of warmth coming in. Gratitude. Love and warmth and respect. That's great. I think I'm breaking up again. I'm sorry about that. So do have a look in the chat box. If you can't hear me, you can see all the nice comments coming in. So I'm actually going to change, just change my internet connection. So if I get lost, if I disconnect, I'll come back, connect again in a minute. I'm just going to move to a different internet connection. Okay, can you hear me okay, Kevin? Okay. Is it still breaking up or is it okay? Maybe just a bit slow, but you seem to be sound okay. Okay, good. Great. So sorry about the technical problem. So that's lovely that all these lovely comments are still coming in. Warm, thoughtful, great fun, gratitude, warmth and love. Love being in their company, happy and content, warm, creative. So lots of you want to be like them. That's great. Yeah, good. Okay, great. So that internet connection seems a bit better. So happy, yeah, that's great. So it's a really lovely thing to do, this practice, to recollect someone's good qualities and dwell upon them. So we're going to keep that good friend in mind because we're going to be coming back to them later on. And basically, I think the feeling that many of you are describing there is very much connected with metta, connected with this loving kindness that we're going to be exploring now in a moment. So what I want to do next then is I want to look at now the practice that we're going to do, the loving kindness practice. So let me just move on again to the next screen. So there is a bit of exposition here that I have to give you, a bit of explaining. So hopefully you can hear all okay. So what is metta? So metta is the word that we use in Buddhism for this this thing that we're trying to do. So metta is actually, the word is from the language which is Pali, which is an old Buddhist language. It's kind of like the Buddhist equivalent of Latin. It's not actually spoken anywhere anymore. And it's quite close to the language that the Buddha would have spoken. Or it's the closest thing we have, at least, to the language the Buddha would have spoken, we think. There's a few different words for it, and many of you have used these words in the chat box. So it's sometimes translated as friendliness. It's sometimes translated as loving kindness. It's sometimes translated as empathy. You know, empathy is like a feeling for the person's situation and life. A lot of you use the word warmth, so that's good. A lot of you, well, sorry, one word I like to use sometimes is concern for their well-being. The fullest definition is it's a desire. So you want someone to be well and happy. It's the desire for the well-being and happiness of another person, or indeed for yourself as well. But usually it's put that way. The desire for the well-being and happiness of another person. So it's not just a kind of a feeling of warmth, although that could be part of it, but you know, you don't always necessarily feel warmth. You can be quite concerned for someone's well-being, even if you yourself are not feeling great. You know, you might not feel very good, or you might not feel a lovely warm feeling, but you can still really want them to be well and happy, you know, and that's an important distinction. So metta is where you really want someone to be well and happy. And with your good friend that you were bringing to mind earlier, I'm sure that you would want them to be well and happy. You know, so metta there is pretty straightforward to experience. So you know, one word sometimes that's used is love, but the problem with love is that it's quite a complicated word, you know, and it's quite a complicated word, and a story I love is that, you know, two people can talk about loving fish, and one person loves to have an aquarium with lots of fish in it and looking after them and lots of different toys in the fish tank and everything. Another person loves fish. It means they love to eat them. And that's a very different story, especially if you're a fish. So love can be a bit complex, you know, as a word, as a term, as what we're trying to get at. So I tend to go more with loving kindness or concern or friendliness, you know, as a term for this. One of the things I think you'll need to do is with learning this practice is figure out what metta means for you as well. But it isn't just kind of a warm feeling, although that can be part of it. It's that you're sitting there and you want the person to be well and happy, as one human being to another. Yeah. So that's what metta is. Again, feel free to write any comments in the chat box if you wish. In terms of what we're going to do, let's come back. So what we're going to do in the meditation practice, the metta bhavana, we're going to cultivate loving kindness in different stages for lots of different people. Yeah. So this isn't just something that happens to you. It's something that you can actually develop more and more and more of. You're not just born, or you don't just live there or exist there with a certain amount of metta and that's it. You can actively cultivate metta. You can cultivate any emotion, any desire. So you can cultivate ill will. You know what I mean? The more you work on cultivating hatred, the more and more hatred you'll have. You can be very, very good at that, you know? And the more you cultivate love, loving kindness, metta, the more of that you'll experience, and you can become very, very good at that. And I've met people who've been practicing the metta bhavana for 40 years, 50 years, longer than I've been alive, and they just are deeply imbued with loving kindness. It's very, very much the Buddhist view that you can completely change your mind and heart. You can cultivate more and more and more good qualities like metta. You can let go more and more and more of negative qualities like hatred, and so on. So we're going to be doing this in this practice consciously, cultivating loving kindness. Yeah. So in terms of the stages, so like the mindfulness of breathing, it has different stages. I should say as well that metta bhavana is the name. So metta is loving kindness, and bhavana simply means development or to cultivate. It's related to the word to become, actually. So in a way, a poetic translation of the term metta bhavana, in a way, would be becoming loving kindness. But probably a more technically accurate one would be the development of loving kindness, the cultivation of loving kindness. But I have to say, I do like the idea of becoming loving kindness. Maybe you do too. So there's 5 stages in the practice. The first stage, we cultivate or develop loving kindness for ourselves. So we try and open to ourselves as fully as we can, allow ourselves to be whatever way we are, accept ourselves the way we are, and wish ourselves well, wish that we may be happy and well, that we may be free from suffering, that we may grow and develop as individuals, and so on. And here we're trying to cultivate that really positive, straightforward relationship with ourselves. We're trying to let go of any negativity towards ourselves. we're trying to really have a loving relationship with ourselves. And that doesn't, again, mean indulgence. You're not self-indulgent if you're doing metta. Metta makes you more real, more authentic, more in touch with yourself, and so on, just in case that needs to be said. Okay, so the second stage then is we pick a good friend, and we are going to develop loving kindness for them. And I'll talk in a minute about how ways in which we do that. But I want you now to pick, so we've already picked a good friend, so I want to ask you to stay with that friend in a few moments when we do the practice. So how I normally do this is I bring to mind the good friend, and I imagine them maybe in front of me, or imagine them sitting in a cafe with them, or I imagine them in their lives, going about their lives, and I just wish them well. I stay in touch with my heart response to them as well. And I just think, may you be well. So if I bring Kevin, Kevin's a good friend of mine. If I bring Kevin to mind, I might say to myself, may you be well, Kevin, may your life go well, and so on. And just wish him happiness, wish him wellness, and so on. And this is often the easiest stage of the practice, because naturally we feel warmed towards a good friend. As we're starting to do the practice, I'd really encourage you to just keep it really simple. Yeah. So pick someone roughly your own age, someone your own gender, and so on. Don't pick your romantic partner, for example. It's not that there's anything wrong with doing metta for your romantic partner, but it might, or someone you have sexual feelings towards, but it might just get complicated as well. You might just get into daydreams or whatever it is. Keep it really simple initially, and once you get more used to the practice, you can vary who you bring to mind. Don't pick someone as well. The usual guideline is don't pick someone who's died or passed away right now. I mean, when you get more familiar with the practice in a few weeks or months' time, you can bring them to mind. That can be quite positive as well. But for now, just keep it really simple. Yeah, someone who you naturally feel feelings of metta, kindness towards. In the third stage, we develop metta for a neutral person. So this is someone who we naturally. This is someone who we don't naturally feel particularly anything for. We don't feel warm towards, we don't feel ill will towards, we just don't really think about them very much. And there's about maybe 7 billion of them out there, I think, at last count. So, so this could be someone like, well, it's probably a bit more difficult to bring them to mind if you're in the lockdown and not seeing anyone, but maybe the neighbor across the street you can see every day, but you've never really talked to very much. Maybe your postman, if you have a regular postman, the person in your local shop, the person at work who you know to see and kind of say hello to, but you've never really interacted with and don't feel particularly strongly one way or the other towards. So pick someone who you can bring to mind, but you don't feel particularly strongly towards. So maybe you could pick someone now who fits that bill, and we'll bring them to mind later in the practice. Don't worry if they're not completely neutral one way or the other. Just pick someone good enough for now, yeah? And again, if you have any questions, you can stick them in the chat box. And what we're trying to do, I'm sorry, I'll give you a moment to pick someone. Yeah? And once you pick someone, just stick with that person, yeah? As in, don't spend the whole stage of this meditation trying to pick the perfect person, and just go with someone. And what we're trying to do in this stage is get over our feelings of apathy or lack of interest and have loving kindness for whoever we meet. You could argue that there's more damage done in the world by people not caring as opposed to people being antagonistic, if you see what I mean. So we're trying to, no matter who they are, have a feeling of warmth and concern for their well-being towards. And that would make the world a much better place, it must be said. In the fourth stage, then, we move on to the difficult person, or the enemy, it's sometimes called. And this is someone who you have difficulties with, someone who you would choose not to hang out with right now, someone who you find challenging, someone who you have enmity towards, be it anything from mild irritability towards all the way up to murderous rage. And this is a really interesting stage. And again, we have to look at the stories here. It doesn't mean when we bring develop metta for them that we have to like them or we have to particularly approve of what they do. Usually the reason we dislike people is that we don't approve of what they do, actually. So it doesn't mean that we have to let go of our difficulty or let go of the things that they do that we find challenging, maybe park it to one side for the moment and you can come back to it afterwards. But regardless of your difficulty with them, we still want them to be well. We still want them to be happy. Apparently Martin Luther King used to say, and I think it's a great saying, he said, when God said you had to love your neighbor, he didn't mean you had to like them. Yeah. So we don't have to like them necessarily, although that is a bonus too. But we can still love people, even if we disagree with how they conduct themselves. The Buddha said, apparently, I've never quite been able to track down this quote, but apparently the Buddha said that doing ill will for someone, doing hatred for someone or ill will, be it anything from mild irritation all the way up to murderous rage, is like reaching into a burning hot fire, pulling out a coal and throwing it at them. Yeah. So hopefully the image is clear that ill will, hatred is very destructive for ourselves as well and our own well-being. It can be quite poisonous. And you might come up against stories like, well, why should I do metta? Why should I wish this person well, given that they don't have my best interests at heart? And that's a story you'll have to unpick yourself as well. That's where this practice gets very, very interesting. It brings, I think it brings in a lot more of ourselves in some ways. It brings in a lot more of our emotional responses to things. And I would argue that it's always better to do metta for someone, even someone you find difficult. It'll always make the relationship go better. It can have a very, very profound effect in the relationship. I have another friend who was working in this very difficult company, very, mercenary, a bank that he used to work in, and he and this person had this very difficult relationship for many, 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 many years, actually. And then he just started, it's like, he started meditating and putting her in the Metta Bhavana. And then all of a sudden she softened towards him. And he can't explain it. The only thing he can explain is that he started doing the Metta Bhavana and suddenly she wasn't as difficult anymore towards him. So strange things happen when you do metta for your difficult people. Yeah. And then they started getting on really well. And the other question that people ask here is, just because you do loving kindness for a person, it doesn't make you a walkover. It doesn't mean that you're soft and weak and a pushover. In my experience, and you'll have to try this out for yourself as well, metta makes you more robust, and as a person, it makes you more able to stand up for what you believe in, and you can do it much more cleanly. It's not as personal anymore. You're able to say, look, I care for you as a person. I don't agree with you as a person, and this is what I think. Yeah. And so it doesn't make you a walkover. It doesn't mean that you let them walk all over you. That's not metta. That's not what we're talking about here. Metta is actually a very robust, positive, strong emotion that makes you more emotionally robust. And I hope I've made that point. So have a think about that as well. And send questions in our comments in the comments if you want as well. In the last stage then, we equalize our metta. We firstly bring metta equally to all four people. I'll lead us through all this, by the way. If this feels overwhelming, don't worry, I'll lead us through this. So we have metta for ourselves, the good friend, the neutral person, and the difficult person. I'm indicating this way because I usually think of us sitting in a circle together and trying to equalize my loving kindness for all four people. And here we're trying to go beyond our preferences, our likes and our dislikes, our likes for a friend, our dislikes for a difficult person. And we're just trying to open and love everyone as much as we love ourselves as much as we love everyone, and so on, each of the four people. So we have metta for each person equally. And then as the second part of that last stage, we open our metta out to include more and more and more people, or at least we have an awareness of more and more and more people. And it's awareness imbued with kindness. And we wish more and more people in the world that they are well and happy until it's all beings everywhere. And all beings everywhere can go as far as your imagination wants to. It can include animals, it can include life in other parts of the universe, whatever way you want, you know what I mean? It's no matter who there is in the universe or what there is in the universe, may they be well and happy. And isn't that a noble intention as well, a noble wish? So I'll say a little bit more, and I know there's a lot of information here, but we'll do this now in the practice. Ways of doing metta, really it's just staying in touch with your own heart and bringing the person to mind, and just wishing that they're well and happy. But the essence of metta is that is contained in these four phrases that we can repeat to ourselves again. or maybe repeat is the wrong word, but drop in to our minds as we're doing the practice. So the 4 phrases are, so we might bring to mind the good friend, and we might say to them in our minds, may you be well. So if I'm bringing Kevin to mind, I might say, may you be well, Kevin. Yeah. May you be happy. So those 2 are pretty simple. May you be well, may you be happy. You can understand these. Buddhism puts a lot of store as well that may you be free from suffering. So, people suffer in the world. I'm particularly struck by the suffering going on in America with the riots, with the police force and things like that. So there's a lot of suffering there, for example, at the moment. And even though COVID seems to be easing in Ireland, just still a lot of suffering around it. And I've had a few friends who've had parents die, nothing to do with COVID, but even then they can't have a funeral, and just so many inconveniences on people's lives at the moment. So there is a lot of suffering in the world. So one wish that you have for people is that may they be free from suffering. Yeah. And then the last one is may you grow and develop. So this might be a strange one, but I would argue that one of the greatest happinesses we can experience in life is feeling that we're growing and progressing as a person. Yeah, that we're deepening as a human being. And so this is a really powerful thing to wish someone, or to wish ourselves. And I would argue that it's one of the greatest sources of happiness we can have in life, to feel like we're growing and developing and progressing. Yeah. So they're the phrases that we can drop in. Now, we drop them in very quietly and with a lot of space around them to let them have an effect. It's like dropping a stone into a pool of water and watching the waves spread out. We're not going, maybe well, maybe happy, maybe free from suffering, may grow and develop. You're not doing it robotically and overly repetitively. So really, it's kind of you're trying to trigger off a sense of, yeah, may you be well, actually, may you be happy, and so on. So that's the practice. I've talked for quite a bit there. There is a good bit of information to present with this practice, but I'll lead us through it now in a moment. So a couple of questions. Can we include family in the metta practice? Absolutely. Usually, it's family and friends in stage 2. It's family and friends in stage 4, the difficult person, I'm afraid, as well, often, So usually it's people who are very emotionally involved with that end up in the stage 4, the difficult person stage as well. Very often a family member or a work colleague, in my experience. Yep. Sonia, it's hard to wish someone well who did you wrong, but it's something to work on. Yeah, that's a good point, actually, that don't be expecting that it's all going to be lovey-dovey straight away. I mean, again, like I was saying earlier with anxiety and things like that, this is a practice. It's a practice, and if you were starting to learn the piano, say, you wouldn't be expecting to play Rachmaninoff's first piano concerto the first time you try it. It'd be very basic steps, and it might take you a while to really learn how to work with this, months even maybe, or even years to learn how to really fully let go of ill will and so on when it comes to really difficult people. But it's worthwhile to do, and it'll have a positive effect on your life. Okay, that's great to hear that you found that well explained. I didn't, by the way, earlier with the difficult person, pick someone who you're not going to be overwhelmed by. Pick someone quite simple, who you only have a mild irritability with. So can you pick someone now? And then we better get into the practice because we're going to run over. So pick someone who you probably just wouldn't choose to sit beside if they came onto a bus with you or something like that, That's a good explanation I've heard of it. If you're on a bus, you saw someone get on, you thought, oh, I'd rather they didn't sit. I know that person, and I'd rather they didn't sit with me. Pick someone to that degree of difficulty. Marianne, I'll come back to that in a minute about how often we do this. Okay, so let's sit and let's get into the practice. So you can forget all that because I'll lead us through it now anyway. So set yourself up, get comfortable. Close your eyes when you're ready. So tuning into your body, how your body feels sitting here. And opening with a sense of warmth or tenderness towards our body experience. The body isn't perfect, but it allows us to do so much. Opening to, are we at ease sitting here? Are we comfortable? Just opening to that. Opening to our emotional experience, opening to our heart, and allowing in whatever's there with kindness, with tenderness, even if it's difficult or painful. If it's very difficult, we can breathe with it as well. And now we move into the first stage of the Metta Bhavana, the development of loving kindness. In a way, we can just continue doing this, just having a sense of warmth, tenderness, care for ourselves, allowing in whatever's there with tenderness, wishing that we may be well and happy, letting go of any complexity around that or negativity towards that. We could drop in the phrases, may I be well, may I be happy, may I be free from suffering, may I grow and develop. And if there are any negative responses or that arise, just having kindness towards them, not getting lost in their story, but just feeling them and letting them go with kindness. Same kind of kindness or tenderness you'd feel towards your best friend or someone maybe your child or something like that. A sense of warmth, acceptance, and so on. And now bringing to mind the good friend we picked earlier, staying in touch with our own heart and bringing them to mind. You might imagine them in their day, or you might imagine them sitting in front of you, or hear their voice. And opening our hearts to them, allowing ourselves to feel kindness, warmth towards them, wishing them well. Not forcing anything out, just opening our hearts towards them with concern, with warmth, or just the intention that they may be well, the wish that they may be well. We can drop in the phrases, may you be well, May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. May you grow and develop. Or if there's another phrase you want to use that's appropriate for their situation, feeling free to use that as well. And if you wander off, just coming back to yourself, your heart, metta for yourself, and then the good friend again. You can reuse the phrases if you wish, if they're helpful. And now letting go of the good friend and just checking back in with ourselves again and metta for ourselves. And then when we're ready, bringing to mind the neutral person we picked earlier. And trying our best not to drift off into boredom, but remembering that they are a human being just like us, just like the good friend. And seeing if we can wish them well, wish them happiness in their lives. We might not know much about them, but we can imagine them in their lives. They have people who love them. They have joys and sorrows just like we do. Then we can use the phrases, may you be well. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. May you grow and develop. And if you get bored or wander off, just coming back again to yourself with metta, and then re-engaging when you're ready with the neutral person. And now letting go of the neutral person, checking in again with ourselves, metta for ourselves. When you're ready, then bring to mind the difficult person you chose earlier. Maybe imagining them in a situation where you're not involved in their lives, leaving aside your difficulty as best you can for now. And remembering that just like us, just like the friend and the neutral person, they're human beings who have likes and dislikes, who have joys and sorrows, who have people who love them. And despite your difficulty, may they be well, may they be happy. May they be free from suffering. May they grow and develop. And this doesn't mean that they're going to walk all over you or that you have to agree with them. We can use the phrases, may you be well. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. May you grow and develop. And now letting go of the difficult person, coming back to ourselves again, a metta for ourselves. And now bringing to mind all four people, ourself, the good friend, the neutral person, the difficult person, and opening our hearts equally to all four people, having metta equally for all four. You might imagine yourself seated in a circle or whatever way works for you. May we each be well. May we each be happy. May we each be free from suffering. May we each grow and develop. And now expanding out our awareness, which is imbued with kindness, with metta, to take in all the people in the building around you, the locality around you. So it's not that we have to squeeze anything out to all of them, it's just that we take in the fact that they exist and that we wish them well. And that can be, this is an imaginative practice, so we might not be able to precisely visualize everyone. Just having a sense of the people in the immediate locality around you, in the room, in the building, on the street you're on. Moving out again to everyone in the region around you. Maybe this part of the city, if you're in the city, this part of the countryside, if you're in the countryside. Wishing them all well, wishing that they all may be happy, free from suffering, growing and developing. Everyone in the city, if you're in a city, or everyone in the county, if you're down the countryside. Everyone in Ireland, if you're or in the country you're in. Again, not trying to force anything, just opening with awareness to all the people here and wishing that they may be well and happy. Remaining more in the heart than in the head. Everyone in the countries around you, the continent you're on maybe. Everyone in the world. Metta, loving kindness for all beings. May all beings be well. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings grow and develop. And now letting go of the practice completely, letting go of any effort to do anything. I'll spend a few moments just sitting. Really letting go of all effort to do anything, or all effort to do nothing either. Just sitting. And when you're ready, starting to become more aware of the room around you once more. The people, the sounds. And when you're ready, you can reintroduce movement and in your own time bring the practice to a close. Okay, so feel free to write in the comments. So Jack asks, do we believe in the vibrations of positive thoughts reaching the people you're bringing to mind, I think is what he means. I have no idea, but it's good to think that it does. It has more of an effect on the practice. I'll come back to how often we do this. Thank you, Sheila. That was lovely. Sharon, it can be normal to feel tired. Just be careful that you're not forcing anything. But if you're trying to really squeeze out some metta, it's best just to stay with, it's a very simple feeling in some ways. Like, even if it's just, okay, I don't feel loads here, but I do actually want the person to be well. It's enough just to do that rather than force something. You know what I mean? But yeah, you can feel tired after any meditation, actually. Yeah. Um, Good. That was felt very self-loving. That was very nice, but maybe feel quite emotional. Yeah, it does kind of open the Pandora's box a bit. Sometimes more than the mindfulness of breathing does. Um, so yeah, so be aware of that. That it will perhaps, you know, open things up, but actually it does so in a good way. And that those what's down there anyway is affecting you anyway. So you might as well start to get more in touch with them in a way. I felt this week was the hardest, even though it was a beautiful practice. Yeah, thanks, Sonia. I mean, it just seems to vary from week to week how well you feel in meditation or how easy it is for you. Great, positive comments. Okay, we're nearly finished. Keep them coming in. I was a bit emotional when I thought of my friend, but very beautiful, very calm. Yeah, that's positive. Yeah, yeah. Emotional is a very broad term. For some people, it's a very lovely experience, and other people, it's a very difficult experience. But I'm going to take that positively. Bernie, same. It was lovely and it felt strange to direct love and kindness towards myself. It's difficult, yeah. In a way, I'm not even sure if to think of directing loving kindness to yourself. The sun is coming out here now. Is in a way I find what's more useful in the first stage is simply, this is how I am, and that's okay, actually, you know. And may I be well and happy. That's all. That's really how simple the first stage can be as well. The first stage is often the most difficult stage, so don't be surprised if it is difficult. A, because you're just started the practice and you haven't quite warmed up yet, and B, because you know the stories about yourself, you know. Good, thanks, Joan. Yeah, thanks, Lisa. That's great. I don't know how long that may last. Well, if you keep doing the practice, Joan, it'll definitely permeate your life more and more. So it is a lovely, lovely practice that's very powerfully transformative. If you found that really difficult, don't worry, just keep doing it, but just you know, stay in touch with us if you want. We better start to finish up. So let me just, if I can get my mouse working, yeah. Let me just, great, thanks, Rosemary. That's lovely to hear. Let me just share the screen again. So your home practice this week is, I want you to do both the mindfulness of breathing and the metta bhavana, but I want you to do 2 metta bhavanas for every mindfulness of breathing. So tomorrow do another metta bhavana, then do mindfulness of breathing, then do 2 more metta bhavanas, one after another, then the mindfulness of breathing, or whatever way, you know what I mean? If you want to be really earnest, you could do metta and mindfulness each day, like a mindfulness in the morning and a metta in the evening. Or whatever way works for you. But I want you to focus more on the metta bhavana this week. Excuse me. And the last thing to say once more is, don't forget, if you want to give a donation to the centre, you can do so at that link, dublinbuddhistcentre.org/donate. So yeah, one person's messaged me saying it's more challenging than the breathing. You will find one practice more easy than the other. I always found the mindfulness of breathing more easy in the early stages than the metta bhavana. But some people actually find the metta bhavana more easy than the mindfulness of breathing because there's more to emotionally engage with as well. Okay, so let's see. Any other comments or questions coming in? Yeah, head off if you need to. That's the end of the course. So we'll finish up now, and I might just unmute myself. So best of luck with the practice. See you next week. Stay safe. May you be all free from suffering. And I'll allow yourselves, let me see, how do I do this? Oh yeah, participants. I'm just going to allow people to unmute themselves. So if you want to unmute yourself, feel free. Sorry, the guided meditations as well. Yeah, they're online. I'll email you those and they'll be about 20-25 minutes. There'll be a led through meditation with those MP3s that I sent you. I'll send you that again. And so you can just use that to meditate again. Sorry for not mentioning that. Great, thanks for all the thank yous coming in. Feel free to say hello now if you want. Let me just turn up my volume here so I can hear you. Okay, and see you next week. Could you record your voice? Well, what you could do is you could come back to the YouTube clip every week. And what I'll do is maybe I'll tag the time that the meditation starts and you can just hit play on that. Maybe if I've time today, I'll cut myself out and just has a video of the Metta Bhavana. That wasn't very long there, unfortunately, as long as the guided meditation. So it'd be better if you use the MP3 because I had to cut it a little bit shorter than I would otherwise like on the meditation. Thank you, though, that you find my voice relaxing. okay, feel free to, yeah, and I'll send the link for the other course and the follow-on course as well as soon as I have that.